What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about my top 36 wide receivers as we head into week 8 of the fantasy football season. Still a little bit under the weather. Going to do this one a little bit differently than I've done in weeks past, just to kind of save me a little bit of the energy so I can get through both the wide receiver and the running back position groups. So hopefully you guys are okay with that. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these wide receivers. So as you can see, I have the tier maker pulled up on the screen. As I said, I'm going to do this one a little bit differently than we've done in weeks past. Weeks past, we've talked about each player individually. Today, I'm just going to talk about these guys as groupings, the tier groups that we have them in. So we'll talk about my tier 1. My tier 1 is those elite wide receiver ones for fantasy football. It is going to be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and A.J. Brown this week. I like all of these guys' matchups. Obviously, you're not thinking about plugging these guys into the lineup. These are players that need to be plugged in. They are the best wide receivers in football, at least some of them, and you need to keep playing them in fantasy football. All of these guys, especially Jamar Chase, have a good matchup here this week. Now, let's move to tier 2. Tier 2 is the high-end wide receiver ones, and I have 5 guys in that tier overall. Coming in at number 4, I have CeeDee Lamb. I have Jayden Reed at 5, Amon-Ra, Drake London, and I have Tyreek Hill in this tier here for me this week as well. Now, like I said, these guys are high-end wide receiver ones. We have CeeDee Lamb in here, Jayden Reed, Amon-Ra, Drake, Tyreek. The big surprise probably is going to be Tyreek Hill. And now I understand that he hasn't given you what you've wanted over the last couple of weeks. It does look like Tua Tagovailoa is going to be back in the lineup. And so with that being said, I think if Tua is back in the lineup, we need to be looking at Tyreek Hill as an elite high-end wide receiver one again for fantasy football purposes. Now, he also has a nice matchup against Arizona. They are currently ranked 25th against the wide receiver position. In this grouping as well, there's a couple other guys who have nice matchups. Jayden Reed gets a matchup against Jacksonville, who is currently 29th against the wide receiver position, and Drake London gets a nice matchup against Tampa Bay, who's currently 27th against the wide receiver position. So lots of good matchups to target here in this tier. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb, he's a good wide receiver no matter what. I almost put him in that tier 1, but we haven't really got the production out of him that I've wanted yet. The only guy here that I would even say has a tough matchup is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has the Tennessee Titans this week, which is the 5th best team against the wide receiver, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is Amon-Ra St. Brown, so we're not really going to overthink the matchup and just keep playing our studs. Now we're going to go to tier 3, and tier 3 is the low-end wide receiver ones, and I have, I think, 6 guys in this tier. We're going to go with Cooper Kupp, Stefon Diggs, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, Malik Nabers, and Davante Adams rounding out the low-end wide receiver ones. Now, Cooper Kupp, he is most likely playing this week. At least that's the last thing that we've heard, so I'm going to keep operating as if he's playing. He does play on Thursday Night Football, and he does have a nice matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, who, as good as their defense has been against the run, they are 32nd, dead last against the fantasy wide receiver position, so they're giving up a lot of points to wide receivers. And if Kupp is in the lineup, you know he's going to be mass targeted. He's a guy that's going to get a lot of footballs coming his way, so we're going to keep playing Cooper Kupp if he is playing. Now, there's 2 more guys who have some pretty nice matchups in this tier as well. DJ Moore coming in as my wide receiver 11. He has a nice matchup against the Washington Commanders. We know the Commanders have been bleeding points to the wide receiver position, and they currently rank 26th, so that's a good matchup that we can target, and so is Zay Flowers. Now, the Browns, they rank 28th against the wide receiver position, and Zay Flowers has looked really good in this offense. Lamar Jackson's coming off of a week where he just threw for 5 touchdowns, so you know that they want to air out the football a little bit if they can. I think Zay Flowers is another player that we can target, and let's also talk about Malik Nabers and Davante Adams, because Nabers, he's a guy who just didn't have the week last week, but he's been a top 5 performer on multiple occasions so far this year. I think he can get back to business, even if it's a tough matchup on Monday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Davante Adams, I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers has a lot of injuries at the moment, and this matchup versus Christian Gonzalez is a little bit different, so I'm probably going to temper the expectations, but a low-end wide receiver 1 is something I'm still comfortable calling him here in week 8. Now let's go to tier 4. Tier 4 is my high-end wide receiver 2s. I have Brian Thomas Jr. in this tier. I have T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, and George Pickens in this tier. That's going to round out the entire tier for me. Now, obviously, Brian Thomas Jr., he has been very good over the last couple of weeks. He gets a matchup here this week against the Green Bay Packers. He gets to go with Jair Alexander being the primary shadow coverage for him this week, so that'll be fun to watch. T. Higgins has been balling. Garrett Wilson, I think now is just a wide receiver 2 with Davante Adams, but he still has some upside, similar to guys like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, that we have seen be elite wide receiver 2s in years past. Terry McLaurin, he's the only guy that I really want to talk about in detail. He has a tough matchup versus Chicago this week. There should be a lot of Jalen Johnson, and there is a very decent chance that we do not have Jayden Daniels in this matchup. So it could be Marcus Mariota, which it didn't look like there was too much of a drop off last week when Mariota came in and took the quarterback position from Jayden Daniels, but still you want to see him playing with the starting quarterback. So we're tempering the expectations on McLaurin this week due to a tough matchup and possibly no starting quarterback. Now let's go to tier 5. Tier 5 is my low end wide receiver 2s. I'm going to have Jalen Waddle in this tier, Devonta Smith in this tier, Amari Cooper, Tank Dell, Deontay Johnson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. That's going to be the entire tier for me. Now that gets us through wide receiver 20 all the way through wide receiver 25. I want to talk about Jalen Waddle because like we mentioned, Tua back in the lineup should mean good things. A nice matchup versus Arizona, currently ranking 25th against wide receivers, should mean good things. For me, it's just all of the Dolphins options this week. We're going to throw them back in the lineup and we're going to roll them out there and be confident in them if Tua is under center. Amari Cooper, he is going to be in this new offense again here with the Buffalo Bills, still getting used to that, but he showed us good stuff last week. I think we can still expect some more good stuff, but maybe not a full Amari Cooper just yet. May take another week or two for him to get that for us. Tank Dell's coming off of a stinker week. I think he's a guy who can bounce back and have a good matchup here against the Indianapolis Colts and still perform for fantasy football teams. And then two guys that we really need to talk about, Deontay Johnson. Last week didn't give us a great game for fantasy football. He has a very tough matchup against Denver. Denver is currently second against the wide receiver position for fantasy football purposes. So this is going to be a very tough matchup, and I think Pat Surtain is scheduled to be back in the lineup. At least that is the plan if he can recover from the concussion. And if he is going to shadow Deontay Johnson, and that's going to be very, very tough for him for fantasy football purposes. And then JSN. I think this is a guy we need to move up the rankings maybe a little bit as we get some more information over the rest of the week. DK is going to be questionable coming into this with a knee injury. I think we are probably trending towards DK not playing. And if DK is not playing, I think JSN will be the de facto number 1 in this offense. We know that they like to throw the football a lot. Buffalo is a little bit of a tougher defensive matchup against the wide receiver position so far this year. But JSN, if DK is not in the lineup, we can probably play him with some pretty good confidence here as a low-end wide receiver 2. Now let's move to tier 6. Tier 6 is my high-end wide receiver 3s. I'm going to put Juwan Jennings, Marvin Harrison Jr., Romeo Doubs, Darnell Mooney, Keenan Allen, and Jordan Addison as the wide receivers in this tier. Now that gets us through wide receiver 26 all the way through wide receiver 31. Juwan Jennings, he goes into the 26th overall wide receiver spot, and he is going to be questionable with a hip injury coming into this one, so that's probably why we've pulled him down a little bit. There's a chance I could even move him up a little bit more just because Deebo Samuel has an illness. He may not play in this game. We also know that Brandon Ayuk suffered the ACL injury that is going to sideline him for the remainder of the season. So Juwan Jennings, a huge waiver wire target this year, somebody that we should be plugging into our lineups immediately, and I think he's going to have a significant role. We see him produce when he got the opportunity earlier in the year. Now, Marvin, he has not been good for us for fantasy. He's been fairly disappointing, and he gets a tough matchup versus Miami, who is currently the number 1 team against fantasy wide receivers. So I'm just not throwing him out there with confidence. I'm looking at him as a wide receiver 3. And if you have some other guys like Tank Dell, Amari Cooper, Devonta Smith, I'm starting them over Marvin Harrison Jr. moving forward. Now, Romeo Doubs, he has a nice matchup against Jacksonville. We talked about that with Jayden Reed. They've been giving up a ton of points to the wide receiver position, currently 29th against the position. And I think Doubs, he's just shown since he's come back from that little suspension where he wanted more targets, they're getting him more involved. He should have a good week as well. And Darnell Mooney also has a good matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who currently rank 27th against the wide receiver position. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on as well. I guess also as well, Keenan Allen, because we talked about that matchup with DJ Moore, something to keep an eye on. All of these guys, I think, are just wide receiver 3s and high-end wide receiver 3s at that. So we should play these guys if you have the opportunity to in your flex. And now let's go to the low end wide receiver 3s. I got the last of the 36 to round this one out. Khalil Shakir, Tyler Lockett, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy, and Wan'Dale Robinson. That rounds out my top 36. As we've mentioned, Shakir with Amari Cooper back in the lineup, that is probably going to cap his upside moving forward, but he's still a fine flex play, and I think he showed it last week with Amari on the opposite side of the field with him. Now, Tyler Lockett, like we said, DK questionable. That would bump him up of our rankings, and then he would be able to have some more work, and I think we can play him against this Buffalo matchup. Now, Ladd McConkey, he's been good. There just hasn't been a lot of passing offense in this offense in general. They don't throw the football a ton, but he's a find flex play worthy. He gets a tough matchup versus Las Vegas, and quite honestly, he might even move down my rankings more now that the Kansas City Chiefs have traded for DeAndre Hopkins. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, they're saying that Hopkins is trending towards playing this week. That would be very tough for him, but we saw Amari Cooper do it last week. We saw Davante Adams do it that week as well. So I think there's a chance that DeAndre Hopkins plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, not a super talented player, but a PPR scam of the year. So in your PPR leagues, he's going to get you 7 catches for 27 yards or something like that. And you're going to have a day where he gets double-digit fantasy points. But that is my top 36 wide receivers. Like I said, I apologize, folks. I don't necessarily do it like this. We talk a lot more in detail about all of the wide receivers. But as I said, I'm a little bit sick. You can probably hear it in the voice. It's making me a little bit, I just don't have the breath. I don't have everything. I don't have the energy right now. So still wanted to get you guys these because I know these are some of the best videos that we do every week. These are some of the more important videos that we do every week. But that being said, I have nothing else for you guys today. So if you haven't already and you enjoyed the content, hit the like button for me. Hit the subscribe button for me as well if you're not already subscribed to the channel. And go join that Discord. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have for me in the Discord. It is free to join. It's going to be linked in the description. There is no risk in doing that because, like I said, free to join. So go join that Discord. And with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you today. So I'll see you on the next one. Till then, peace out.